I like the general structure of what's going on. I'm not yet ready to say that I think we're out of the bearish territory. So we're somewhere at this like almost decision point where the market needs to work out, are we at the start of 2022? Or are we somewhere in like mid 2021? Or are we starting some kind of a new market cycle? Have we reset psychology enough? So we haven't quite got I don't think we've really got enough of a story to say which one it's going to be. But I'm certainly entertaining both ideas.
And I really want to talk also later in the podcast about stretch and strategy, because I think it's like so misunderstood from TradFi and Bitcoiners, which is really fun to see. But like first, I'm curious about like how you also see that, because I think 100,000 was actually like a really interesting point, and I forgot his name now, but the guy that was writing about the silent IPO last year.
Oh yes,
I found that. Oh, Jordi Vissa, yes. I found it really interesting. And if you think about it, like a lot of people maybe came into Bitcoin like 2020, 2021, where like the big uprise was, where like Elon Musk, like all the thing, like all the euphoria, all the drama was happening. If you bought somewhere in 2020 around like 3K, 5K, 10K, you made a 10X. You made like maybe even like a, I don't know, like a 12X, 13X, whatever the X is, wherever you bought it from. And this is like in a 5-year span. Someone that bought an asset, hold it for 5 years and makes a 12X, he got significantly wealthier. And at the same time, there was always this like, oh, laser eyes till 100K, and like is this psychology going on of like we hodl till 100K and like all of those things. Then you reached 100K and the focus kind of got lost. Like the focus was kind of like distorted, and a lot of people got really wealthy the last 5-6 years. And so like, of course, maybe you want to buy that like great house for your family, or like your car needs an upgrade, or like, I don't know, like what do you want to do? You want to retire maybe, and you're like, hey, like I have 50 Bitcoin, I guess I can like lay down a little bit lower now because like I have a lot of purchasing power. And so I think there's like just like a lot of things coming together with like 100K to 25 years and all the things. How do you look like at the psychology side of the Bitcoin 25 year?
Yes, no, I think all of those points are really valid. And I liked Jordi Vissa's piece. It was called A Silent IPO. And his general thesis was, we see this in early stage tech companies. The early investors, they know it's going to the moon, but they've been there for such a long time. They've been through the ups and the downs, and there's a lot of downs in early stage companies. There's been a lot of downs for Bitcoin. People get tired. And also I think a lot of Bitcoiners get stuck with it's the best asset in the world, which it is. It's the best asset in the world. Therefore, why would I ever sell it? And therefore, why would anybody ever sell it? And that I think is a trap, because the truth is, if you think about where a lot of Bitcoiners are, and you can look at the demographics, we do surveys about subscribers. We can look at our YouTube statistics. Like you name any podcast, they'll give you the exact same statistics. Millennials are the dominant proportion of Bitcoiners. Like they are the largest bulb of them. And where are millennials in their life? I mean, I look at where am I in my life? I've got a son. I'm looking to buy a house. I've got like, I mean, literally in the home building phase of my life, which is the most expensive part of life. There's going to be private school at some point. Like all of these things are things I'm planning for. I'm going, how much Bitcoin do I need to hold? When do I sell it? What do I do with it? All of those dynamics. And also it's a relative market. People who are sitting there in Bitcoin watching gold ripping and watching Nvidia ripping and watching like other things go up. By the way, I love this whole concept. The way that Bitcoiners feel watching gold and silver rip, there's 2 ways to solve that. One, understand that like that's literally how Peter Schiff has felt for 15 years, 17 years. Like we're getting a bit of a flavor of what that feels like. But the other one is, this is why I hold gold. I hold gold for specifically this reason. I would hate if I found the house that I wanted to buy right now and I needed the deposit money. I would hate myself for selling Bitcoin at 90K, because I know that 90K is a horrible price. But my gold was absolutely ready to go. It's my liquidity buffer. I could sell it tomorrow. I wouldn't think twice about it because I'm exchanging it for the house. So like actually owning a bit of gold, I think a lot of Bitcoiners have worked out, maybe I shouldn't be 100% Bitcoin, because they're realizing that it's a tool for a job. And there's nothing worse than Bitcoin being down and you having to like being a forced seller, not because you have to sell the Bitcoin, but because the thing that you wanted to buy needs to be bought today. right? Could be schooling, could be house, whatever. So just thinking about where people are in life, like life is dynamic, life changes. I see very often comments where people are like, but it was 100K for the first time in February. Why didn't they sell then? Why did they choose to sell later on? It's like, well, life changes over the course of 2025. Like, decisions take time. I often think back to that guy who sold 80,000 Bitcoin, like at the top, props to him. Imagine cashing out $9 billion at the top. So that dude, imagine the thought process that he's gone through, he or she, having bought it back in 2010, I think it was. He held it for 14 years. And he's like, I'm going to liquidate $9.6 billion worth of Bitcoin. Imagine how long it takes you to like do the compute cycles and think about the mechanics and engaging Galaxy as the OTC. Like, just that's a decision that you don't go like, oh, I'm going to wake up one morning and just like, just casually sell $9.6 billion. Like, it takes time for people to think about this stuff. It would take time for me. Even if I was to liquidate a small portion of my holdings, I would like plan it out. I'd have a game plan for what I'm going to do. So I just think that understanding life is life, and holding Bitcoin is a great part of it, but it's not the only thing people do. It is a tool for a job for most people, because as Saylor would say, right, you can't do anything with your Bitcoin, and some people are going to die with their Bitcoin. I think that's a mistake, because your life is more precious than the Bitcoin. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners have probably worked out, now that they've got wealth, they've got actual wealth, they've got ahead over the last couple of years. They're just looking at life circumstances and saying, well, I've only got a short amount of time on this earth. My family needs things. How do I look after them? And like, can I use my Bitcoin to do that? So in my view, that's a big part of it. There's the IPO moment. There's the where Bitcoiners are in their life. There's 100K being a psychological level. There's cycle traders who just are so convinced in the 4-year cycle that they're like, oh, it's going to be a bear, I'll sell it now. There's all of these things. And then once you start to sell off, there's a bunch of people who've been sitting over the sell button being like, they're indecisive. And they're going, oh, but it's 110. What if it goes to 150? I'll wait. Oh, no, it's 100. Hang on. But what if it bounces from here? And then it goes down to 80. They're like, oh, man, I missed it. So I'm going to wait for the relief bounce. And then, oh, you're going to give me 95? You're going to give me 100? They're going to feel that feeling to exit on the way back up. And ultimately, that's what creates bear markets. The real question is, does the demand come in to actually absorb that sell side? Because once we flip over and really start trending higher, a lot of those momentum traders who switch into gold, who switch into NVIDIA, who switch into something else, they're going to start seeing the asset that they actually wanted to own, but they sold because they were impatient moving, and they're going to come roaring back in. So, markets are a process, and I think it's important to think about them as such.
This is really interesting. The momentum traders, like, it's so hard for me to think of, because like all my life I've researched the thing and then just like owned 100% of it. First Tesla, now 100% Bitcoin, and just like sticked with it and haven't sold anything in a very long time. I'm really curious. I think we talked about it last time. You said like your Bitcoin plus gold as cash. So you still have that the portfolio where you like have a gold reserve and a Bitcoin reserve.
Yes, 90-10. And to be honest, I made a deal with myself in about, I think it would have been about 2020. Because in 2020, I held a bit of gold as well. And I'm pretty sure I was driving down the freeway. I was listening to Michael Saylor. It was when Saylor had only just come on the scene. It would have been like August, September. Bitcoin's like 10K. And I'm driving down the road listening to him talk about this thing. And I was like, and I've already done the work. Like, I'm already majorly long Bitcoin. But I was like, I probably should have some gold as well. And I remember making the decision, no, I'm going to sell my gold and put it all into Bitcoin, which was a great trade right before the 2021 bull. So that was a good decision. But I made a deal with myself. I said, I know that you need to own some gold. You just need to own it. And I had this like just gut instinct that I needed to do it. And I said, when you reach a point where you'll know that you've got enough Bitcoin. And what I now know what that is, it's Hodl talks about this as the BitLife crisis. In Australia, $1,000 doesn't buy you 1 million sats. It's really sad to see how many sats you buy with a meaningful chunk of your paycheck these days. That to me was a BitLife crisis, where you realize, oh man, like I'm buying hundreds of thousands of Satoshis now. You can't buy 1 million sats easily. You can't buy 10 million sats easily. And I look at my own journey, and like I was able to buy 1 million sats or 10 million sats at points in time in my life, but my salary was way lower. I was like a junior engineer, right? So you're dealing with a terrible salary, but you can buy more corn. And then as my salary grows, as everybody does, as you go further on in your career, you can buy more with dollars, but the sats are worth more. So like you're always kind of chasing your tail. And eventually I just realized now is the time for me to buy the gold. And I ended up doing, I think it was about maybe 18 months ago, 24 months ago, I really started my precious metals accumulation. And the idea was I want to have that liquidity buffer for exactly environments like we're in right now. And I always wanted to have a 90-10 split, just again, gut feel. And I could never get it to 90. I could never get it to 10% because Bitcoin kept running. Every time it went up, I was like, oh man, now I have to buy more gold. I can't ever buy the Bitcoin because I'm like chasing this 10%. Finally, Bitcoin pulls back and I hit my 90-10. So I'm like, okay, great. It did the job. But I know what's going to happen is Bitcoin's going to keep moving. But I think by having that diversification, it gives me that buffer. If something happened, I do not have to tap my Bitcoin reserve. I can tap my gold reserve, which is just going to be much less volatile. And that is what I'm essentially buying it and holding it to do.
What do you think about Stretch as a cash reserve?
Yes. So actually, us as a business, we've just taken a position in Stretch. I wrote a piece on this yesterday. I think it's fascinating. So just to give people a bit of a summary, Stretch is, I think it's not their latest, but one of their latest preferreds from Strategy. And the idea is it's the only one that's a variable rate. And it's basically going after monthly term deposits or money market funds. Right, they've been slowly ratcheting up the interest rate because the target is for this thing to stay at $100 US dollars. So they want this thing to trade at $100. And the idea is that people should be able to come in and out of it like a cash equivalent. It's basically a T-bill, treasury bill, like a 1-month bill, but from Strategy rather than the US government, pays 11% rather than 3.6%. Now, I'm of the view that we are in a rate cutting cycle, but I think that rates continue to come down. I think the administration in the US and, I think the central bankers all want the rates to come down because it just creates stress over time. So as rates come down, that risk-free rate versus an 11% starts to look very, very attractive. Now, for us as a business, we've essentially acquired a couple of months of our salary in STRC because it's just going to sit there as a cash reserve, earning that 11%. So that if we ever get a big tax bill, or if we ever get, we get some horrible Bitcoin bear winter where suddenly it's hard to come by income, we've got a couple of months' salary as like a buffer. It's just going to sit there and generate 11% coupon. So I think it's a very interesting product. I think it's got a very, very large total addressable market. I mean, there's several trillion dollars worth in the money markets. It will not happen quickly. It will take a long time for people to kind of click to it, and Bitcoiners will go first. A lot of my clients in our Orange plan, they're retirees or professional investors, people who like high net worth individuals. The amount of times I've had conversations where Strategies preferreds have come up, and Stretch in particular, because it is that 11%. I can sit it there, and if I've got a large pool of wealth, I can put a chunk of it there, earn a salary effectively, and then let the rest of my assets run. So I know it's an attractive product. The fact that it's got back to $100 and it's staying there by design. So now I think 11% is the rate that the market is willing to finance Saylor's purchases. And in my piece yesterday, I was like, okay, well, basically the arbitrage that Strategy is doing, as long as Bitcoin appreciates more than 11% a year over the long arc of time, then basically they're arbing that difference. And I just did some very, very rough calculations of like, if you give Bitcoin a 10% CAGR or a 20%, 30%, 50%, what does it look like? And with a 10% CAGR, in 10 years, Bitcoin will be as big as silver and Nvidia are today. And I'm like, can Bitcoin do that in 10 years? I'm like, of course, imagine betting against that. And then you put like a 20% CAGR on, and suddenly it's getting up to like gold in 2020. Can Bitcoin get to where gold was in 2020 over the next 10 years? I'm like, imagine betting against that. And it's only when you get up to like a CAGR of 50% that you're like, okay, Bitcoin's bigger than global GDP. I'm like, okay, that might be a bit of a stretch target. So really, if he's financing at 11% and 10% just gets us to silver in 10 years time, like I'm pretty sure the CAGR is going to be higher than that. I think Bitcoin's a far more valuable asset than that. So my view is that that's probably a clever arbitrage. So the market has now been saying, yes, we're willing to finance your Bitcoin purchase at 11%. There's a huge amount of money that will over time start coming into that type of a product. And that means that Strategy can really start their accumulation engine again. And again, they're not the only buyer, but they're a meaningful one. At times, they're on par with the ETFs in terms of the buy side capacity. So Really, the ETFs and strategy I view as too easy to track large buyers. There's then the rest of the spot market, but I think the demand from both of those two is likely to be fairly healthy moving forward.
It's crazy what's going on. Like the preferreds weren't on my radar at all till I had time of like a Miami flight of 10 hours, and I was like, oh, like what can I research? And then I was like, oh yeah, let's download the last free strategy earnings calls and like some videos from some people that I trust in the space. And I was like, came out of the flight after 10 hours and I was like, how can I not like how did I not see that last year, the whole year? It's really fascinating actually with the arbitrage. And I'm actually curious with the CAGR, because there's a lot of discussion, okay, what is a realistic CAGR of Bitcoin? I mean, the last 10 years has been like, I don't know, 60, 70% CAGR, but the last 10 years, I don't think is realistic to just like, okay, last 10 years we had like 60, 70, next 10 years will be 60, 70, just because like we have been so much bigger now than like we started 10 years ago. Yep. Now, having a 60% CAGR is just like absurd amount of huge numbers that are, I think, not even possible. But then you look at like maybe 20 or 30%, and you're like getting the realistic realm of like what you could possibly like expect from a CAGR. How do you look at the CAGR for like the next 10, 20 years? The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone, or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because MicroSeed is not selling the washer. MicroSeed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today, and you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io.